Hi friends, my name is Kay Lorraine, and today I'm doing my monthly recommendations for the month of April, and the theme this month is survival stories. Monthly Recommendations was a group created by myself and my good friend Trina over at Between Chapters, and I highly recommend you check out our Goodreads group and join in with us where you can do monthly topics for either your blog or your YouTube channel and just talk about books and recommend books all based on a monthly theme. And like I already said, the theme this month is survival stories, which Trina picked out because it is her birthday month. So be sure to check out her channel and wish her a happy birthday sometime this month. But without further ado, I'm going to hop right into the survival stories that I've picked out, starting with World War Z by Max Brooks. Now this is a little bit of an unusual survival story because it is told with different stories from all around the world, all from one particular reporter, and he is going around and finding out how people survived the zombie apocalypse. Now this is technically a zombie novel, but there really aren't that many zombies in this novel. It's more of the aftermath after humanity kind of got through the worst part of the zombie apocalypse. And I really enjoyed this story. It is very haunting. There are some very intense moments throughout this entire book, and it really looks at what humans would do to survive, and it looks at it in a very honest way on how we as a society would kind of react to something like this. It was really fantastic. If you're a fan of The Walking Dead or zombies in general, I highly recommend you pick this up. I'm sure you've probably heard about it because it's been out for a very long time. But if you've watched the movie and you did not enjoy it, still read the book because the book is amazing and the movie sucks. The next book is probably going to end up on everyone's list, but I'm going to mention it anyway because I really enjoy it, and that is The Martian by Andy Weir. This book follows a main character named Mark Watney who gets left behind on Mars, and he has a certain amount of food to last him, I think something like 30 days, and the next mission doesn't come to Mars for another 4 years, so he has to figure out how he is going to survive that. And this book really kept me on the edge of my seat. I was wondering, okay, how's he going to survive this? Is this possible? Because for most books you go into it thinking, yes, totally, this person is going to survive this. But Mark Watney's in a pretty sticky situation, and the odds of that happening are very unlikely, so this book, oh my gosh, it kept me on the edge of my seat and I really liked it. And this shouldn't be like considered a comedy book, but Mark Watney is really hilarious, so this was also incredibly entertaining. Entertaining and gripping are the two words I would definitely use to describe this book. The next book that I have to recommend is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows by J.K. Rowling. Now, you do have to read the previous 6 books to get to the finale and conclusion in this series, but I just had to talk about it because the entire first half of this book takes place with 3 main characters surviving out in the wild, and my brother and I like to refer to it as Harry Potter and the Deathly Camping Trip. That's our favorite way to refer to it, and it's pretty accurate because it gets pretty intense, and I really liked it. And this isn't like the most intense survival story ever because of course they have magic and they can make things happen, but there are some pretty tense moments because they're being tracked down, and it's just it's not what you would normally think of when you think survival story. But when I was collecting my list, I was like, that's a good one. There were some good survival moments in there. The next book that I have to recommend is Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. This is another kind of unusual pick because it's not a very gritty survival story like I think traditionally comes to mind when you think of survival stories, but this takes place years after this flu sweeps the nation and the world, not just the nation, but sweeps the world and wipes out the majority of the population. And it follows a traveling theater group trying to survive in the aftermath of what happened to the world. This was really interesting. I liked the exploration of what happens to civilization after it technically falls from an apocalypse and how it's built back up and how people individually survive. Next is a recent read for me, and that is How I Live Now by Meg Rossif. This follows a main character named Daisy who moves from New York City to England, and when she moves over there, war breaks out and she is stuck with some other children, her cousins, and they have to figure out how they're going to survive through the war. This book starts off kind of slow, and it doesn't feel like there is a lot of urgency in their survival story, but as the book continues on, it really picks up, and there are some really intense moments. This book did get pretty graphic, so if you are not into graphic survival stories, I would not recommend picking this up because there were some very intense moments and very graphic moments, and it just made me very uncomfortable at points, and this is something that I'm not, I mean, obviously I don't love it, but I'm not like 100% uncomfortable with it all the time, but there were some points in this book that I was just like, ooh, I've got to put this down. And it's a tiny book, but it took me a little while to get through it because the intensity of it gave me a lot of anxiety. And lastly, I have Between Shades of Grey by Rutia Sepetys. This is a historical fiction that follows a main character named Lena and her family as they are abducted by the Soviet Union from Lithuania and put into concentration camps and just moved around throughout the duration of World War II. And this book is very, very intense, especially because this was an actual event that happened. It's definitely a part of World War II that doesn't get talked about a lot because obviously there were some other really horrific things that happened during World War II, but this one is equally horrific and terrible, and this just chronicles Lena's journey with her family and all of the awful things that happened, and you could definitely tell there was a lot of research that went into this book, and it is a very, very harrowing tale. It is not something that you should sit down with any intention of feeling good for the duration of the book or quite some time afterwards. So I do want to go ahead and put out a trigger warning that this book gave me a lot of anxiety. My emotions toward this book were very, very strong because it was graphic, it was very intense, it was very detailed on the horrific things that did happen to people, and just the dehumanization of people in this book was just very heartbreaking to read. So if you cannot handle very, very intense books, I would not recommend this one at all, but it is a very important book to read. It was done very well. I did want to throw this one in here because it's probably one of the most moving survival stories I have ever read, and Rutia Sepetys just has a really incredible voice for historical fiction, so I did want to throw this one in there. That is it for today's video. I honestly didn't think that I would have that many books to recommend for survival stories because it's not a genre that I typically reach for, but I found that even books that are in other genres, they do have that survival story. For example, like Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows, there is a survival storyline that's thrown in there. So I hope that everyone else is kind of surprised when they put their list together, when they figure out, oh wait, that book is kind of like a survival story, even though it's like a fantasy novel or a nonfiction novel. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and link Trina's video on the screen somewhere on here because she's like always really great about getting her videos up before I am. So yeah, I'll go ahead and link hers. Be sure to check out her channel and wish her a happy birthday, and be sure to check out our Goodreads group where you can find everyone else's videos and blog posts and get some other recommendations for survival stories that maybe you haven't heard of yet. As always, thank you so much for watching. Stay weird.